my last video, I did like 6 test shots and they all looked fine. And then as soon as I pressed record, the entire video is super overexposed. I tried to put a filter over it to make it a little better, but I actually think it kind of made it worse. I'm using the back camera of my phone to record, so I don't have a viewfinder, so just have to hope for the best. We are here to talk about my recent sci-fi reads. Super fun, super vibey. Some of these I finished literally so long ago, so forgive me if my memory is a little vague. I think it'll come back to me. So this one I actually finished almost 6 months ago, exactly 6 months ago. I read The Center by Ayesha, Manazir, Siddiqui. This is kind of more like a lit fic, contemporary fiction sci-fi. Our main character, Anissa, she is a young woman who lives in London, and she was originally from Pakistan, and her family still lives in Pakistan. She's living off of her rich parents' money and supplements with her own income from doing translations. I think she is translating like Indian Bollywood movies from their original language to her language, which is Urdu. She's like really unsatisfied with this work. She does what she considers like more serious translations in her free time. She'll find works that she thinks would be really satisfying to translate, and she does that like as a hobby. And her best friend is like, you should need to be doing this as a job, and she isn't so sure. She decides to go and take a college class. In one of the first sessions, there is this white guy sitting in front of her, and she doesn't think anything of him until he answers the phone and speaks in a different language. I think he speaks in French. And then he gets another phone call and he starts speaking in Mandarin. She's like, what's going on here? Why does this guy know so many languages? And so she taps him on the shoulder and she's like, excuse me, how many languages do you know? And he, I think he knows 3 or 4 languages. And so she asks him, like, what's your secret? Like, what, are you taking special courses or what? And he says he'll tell her the secret if she goes on a date with him. And she's like, wow, so smooth. They end up going on a date, and he doesn't actually ever reveal the secret. They start dating, they become boyfriend, girlfriend, they move in together. I think they date for a year. They have a relationship like any other relationship. There's a lot of positives and there's a lot of negatives. Our main character, Anissa, she is, a lot of it is, Anissa has a lack of emotional vulnerability with Adam. And part of it is that she feels like he's been keeping the secret from her because he told her that, well, I just like study super hard. That's how I learn these languages. She has tried to teach him Urdu multiple times and he hasn't been able to learn it. He hasn't even been able to pick up on basic words. She wants to introduce Adam to her family and take him to Pakistan. Anissa and Adam start their journey. While they're traveling, somebody speaks to Adam in Urdu and he replies in perfect, fluent Urdu. Anissa is livid. He like grins at her. I really love you and I wanted to make a good impression. She's like, I know that you're lying to me about how you're learning these languages. She describes it as the type of Urdu that your grandmother uses. Adam's like, I don't know, like I thought you would be happy. So after this, the trip goes really poorly because Anissa's kind of done with him. Like I said, she's not emotionally vulnerable with him, and this was kind of like the tipping point. She can't stand that like Adam is enjoying himself like with her parents and that they like him and all this, you know, everything's irritating her. So they end up, when they come back, breaking up. But Adam tells Anissa that he will tell her the secret, that she's right, he's been lying, and that he has this secret to how he's been learning these languages. He tells her that he couldn't tell her because he could get in like huge legal trouble or whatever, but that he's allowed to refer one single person to the center, gives her the contact information or whatever they need to do. So Anissa goes to the center. It's like a resort spa type of retreat where you are also going to become completely fluent in a language of your choice in 10 days. It's all very mysterious, and she's all like asking questions and nobody will really give her answers. Things get a little bit more complicated when she befriends the owner and manager of the center named Sheba, and she kind of gets more and more pulled into the inner workings of the center. I rated this book 4 stars. The characters are, in my opinion, not very likable, including Anissa. Anissa is very self-centered. She also makes some really bad decisions, but I had a lot of empathy towards her. You spend a lot of time developing Anissa and Adam's relationship and their dynamic, and it's not a very enjoyable one either. It just kind of depends on on if you like reading about kind of sad, insufferable things or not. She is really dismissive of Adam's feelings, but also Adam is annoying. When you're in Anissa's mind, you understand why she is being dismissive of other people. The way that the center works, which is kind of the sci-fi element, is super interesting, and it kind of gets fed to you alongside Anissa. Something I liked about this book is that there's these little pockets of side characters' stories that you get when you're at the center. It gives the characters a new perspective on life and a lot of empathy towards people whose lives they might not have understood before. The overarching themes of the book all tie in with that. There's a lot of interesting dynamics explored with race and class. Anissa and Adam's dynamic. She is a Pakistan immigrant and he is a white boy, but she has parents' money to fall back on, and she grew up wealthy, and he grew up poor. They both hold a lot of resentment towards each other for these things, and these things tie in with other dynamics in their relationship and just make everything complicated and worse. And then the whole dynamic changes when Anissa goes to India and visits Sheba's family, who are all also Indian and have all these different class backgrounds that are different than the ones that we have in our Western culture. The next book that I read was The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This is like a lit fic kind of sci-fi. It's a time travel story. We're first introduced to Edwin, who is moving to Canada in 1912 after he caused some drama at his family dinner over in London, I think. He started an argument with his parents, who were British people that had been raised in India, and he told them that he didn't agree with Britain's colonization of India, and so his father sent him to Canada to be a businessman rather than inherit. He was like a lord or something, I don't know. Actually, I think he sent him to America, and then he meets up with somebody and they're like, Canada's the future. So then they start traveling together. He ends up in this really, really, really small town for a few days. While he's there, he decides to go through a walk in the woods. When he's walking through the woods, he runs into this priest. The priest is asking him questions. Edwin thinks the priest appeared out of nowhere and he's weirded out by him. So he keeps going, and then he has an experience. One moment he's surrounded by the trees, and the next moment he hears all these weird sounds. It sounds like a big whooshing sound, and he's in this big cavernous space all of a sudden. And there's violin music playing. It only lasts for a few moments, but then he gets pulled out of it and he's like, oh, And he totally freaks out and like runs out of the woods. And then he runs to the church to find the priest, and he's like, what the heck? But the priest kind of disappears off, and that's where we're left. There was this weird anomaly in Canada in 1912, and this is the premise of the book, is surrounding this anomaly that happened. After this confrontation with the priest, we start shifting perspectives throughout time. We go to this woman in 2020 who is looking for this girl that had that same like mystical experience or whatever in the woods. And there's Gasberry, who is the investigator who is investigating this anomaly. There's a famous author who wrote a book about a pandemic who is traveling to Earth to go on tour for her book signing. She seems to be a clear stand-in for Emily St. John Mandel. I think those are all the characters we're following. I ended up rating this book 2 stars. The beginning section that I described to you with Edwin was, to me, the best part of the book and the most interesting part of the book, and I really didn't like it after that. The 2020 plot line was there to talk about the pandemic, and I didn't want to talk about the pandemic. The famous writer plotline was also based around a pandemic. As far as I understand, this book is like really self-referential, which didn't play well for me because I haven't read any of her other works yet. I also, baseline, I'm not like a big fan of tying your books in with each other. I don't know, it's just not my thing. I'm not really into like a multiverse. I just wasn't interested in Morella, the girl that's looking for her friend who witnessed the anomaly. I wasn't really interested in Olive. Her perspective was just really not fun to be in. She's really cynical and she's really anxious and she is really stressed about the pandemic. She's also being targeted with sexism that I do not think makes sense in 2020-03. It was just too modern. Things like, shouldn't you be at home raising your kids instead of going on a book tour? And that didn't make sense in 2020-03. I hope that doesn't make sense in 2020-03 to say to somebody. And things like, oh, your husband must be so amazing to sacrifice and stay home with the kids so that you can do this. And she would just get so irritated about it and think about it and think about it and think about it. And yeah, it wasn't fun. I also felt like maybe I'm just stupid, but I felt like there was a huge plot hole at the end. It's something that would have just made it obvious to the characters what the situation was with the anomaly much before they become aware of what the situation is. I'm gonna have to go on Reddit and figure out what I'm missing. The next book that I read was The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is another like lit fic type of sci-fi. This book takes place in a society where the memory police are an authority figure that swoop in and steal people's memories in the night. Memories is not really the exact term. They steal people's concepts of things. Our main character is a novelist. She is working on her manuscript. She just lives on her own. I think that both of her parents have passed away. The book starts out the morning after the memory police have come. And usually when people wake up, they have this feeling that the memory police have come. They can tell that something is missing. So they kind of have to look around and search and wonder what it is. The narrator goes outside and she realizes what she's forgotten, and it is birds. So she sees a bird and she is like, oh, those are associated with my father, and realizes that that has been lost. As time goes on, the like little fragments of the memories slip away more and more. It's harder for them to recollect the thing that they're looking at and to conceptualize the thing that they're looking at or the thing that they've forgotten. If it's something that they have in their households, they have to find and remove them from the household. Their households can be raided by the memory police or swept by the memory police to ensure that nobody is keeping memories that have been taken. There's also a kind of interlude or B plot, and that is the story that the novelist is writing. She's writing a story about a woman taking a typing class and starting an affair with the typing teacher, and then realizing that things aren't what they seem to be. I ended up rating this book 3 stars. I loved the concepts it was exploring and the way that things were being stolen. I wish that it had been longer, or that we had separated out the A plot story with the B plot story. I wish that either of those stories had just been explored more. Both of the stories are about having your agency stolen from you, and how once that happens, there's nothing that you can do to help yourself, because that's what your agency is. Really liked all those themes. I wanted it to be explored more. The end part particularly could have been really expanded upon, and maybe could have been a little bit more hopeful. Everything I read is so bleak. The next book that I read was Wool, which is the first book of the Silo series by Hugh Howey. I have watched the first 2 seasons of the show already. This is like a more traditional genre sci-fi, like a post-apocalyptic society, I guess dystopian. So this takes place in a giant silo, which is essentially inhabited by a city. But to this city, the city is their whole world. They don't know really what's going on outside of the silo at all. They don't know if they're the only people or what. So the story starts out with the sheriff of the silo, so the top cop, going out for a cleaning. Going out for a cleaning is what you do when you have broken the law. And one of the laws is that you can't say that you want to go outside. So the sheriff has said he wanted to go outside, so he gets to go outside for a cleaning. So he's able to go outside. He has a big suit on that keeps him secure. He takes his little piece of wool out. He cleans the camera that shows what the outside world looks like to everybody inside. It's just one little camera that shows the barren wasteland that they're looking at. He cleans it, and then he starts to walk up the hill, but starts struggling, and eventually falls and dies. And there are a number of corpses littered about, but one of them, and the one that he died next to, was his wife's, who had went out for a cleaning the year before, for the same reason, because she wanted to go outside. So the silo needs a new sheriff, and the deputy has suggested Juliet down in mechanical to take the sheriff's place. She does eventually get the job, but there's initially a huge amount of pushback from the head of IT, Bernard, because she one time stole heat tape from IT, and he holds this against her and basically thinks she should go out for a cleaning for it. That's where we start out, is with Juliet taking over this job as sheriff, starting to unravel the mystery surrounding why the sheriff and his wife went out for a cleaning. This is like a third person kind of distant perspective, so it kind of jumps person to person. So Juliet is the main character, but we spend a lot of time with different characters in the silo. I rated this book 4 stars. I would say this is probably influenced by the show, because a lot of the problems that I had with the book were resolved in the show. I really liked the way that the job networks, and I guess kind of the like economic system ran in a really unique way. You get to explore like what a society would look like if we didn't do jobs in the way that we do, if we didn't do careers in the way that we do now, if we relied more on reputation and word of mouth and community. There's a lot of bad stuff happening in the system, but most of it is because of like a big evil. Because you have that third person perspective, you don't really get into all of the like inner workings of each of the characters, but like I said, this show does do that. That's just kind of the feeling that I get from sci-fi. You kind of are more of an outside absorber, or like a watching it like a movie, and you have to interpret characters' actions to understand like their inner workings. One of the other things that I didn't love about the book, but that they fixed in the show, was that I don't think this is a spoiler, because I think it tells you like right when he walks on scene, Bernard is so obviously the bad guy and he's so obviously evil. The sheriff dies, and then a little while later another person in power dies, and he has to take over their job, and he's like, I could get used to this. Being super dismissive of the death, like drinking her alcohol. There's more nuance added to him later, but kind of like took away the mystery a little bit. The last book that I read was Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. This was a sci-fi, little bit of lit fic. This followed the story of Adina. Adina is an alien. The story starts out with her basically being like deployed to Earth. Her consciousness is just put into the mind of a human baby. And I think that's what happened, at least. I'm not exactly sure. And she's aware from the moment of conception that she is an alien. She's got like a single mom. Her dad like never met her, and her stepdad left when she was like 6 years old. Her mom is Sicilian, I think. Adina's born in the 70s, I believe. But one day when she was young, they kind of struggle with money. Adina's mom will like grab random junk off the street. One day she brings home a fax machine, and she's like, we can make it into a planter. Her stepdad's like, but go put it in the kids' room, like it's too big or whatever. And so she puts the fax machine in Adina's room. She like clicks around on it to try to show Adina to send a fax, but they can't get it figured out. It says there's no line. Later that night, Dina goes to sleep, and she's kind of summoned by her alien leaders. They communicate with her through intuition, as their people do. Kind of pull her into a classroom setting, and they show her a slideshow on the board, and she's like, cool, I understand. And when she wakes up, she finds a piece of paper and writes, I saw a rabbit today, and puts it in the fax machine, and this time it sends, and she gets a response. This starts her communication and her job. So her job is to investigate Earth. Her home planet is dying, and they need to see if Earth is inhabitable for them. So Adina starts her research. The story is just about Adina growing up as an alien and learning about humans and about how to be human, and learning about how much other humans are struggling to be humans as well. I thought this was an amazing book. I gave it 5 stars. I loved Adina as a character. She had an alien personality, but not in the way that you always see. She is a super loyal person. She latches onto a couple people that she kind of ends up going through life with. Adina tells several people about her being an alien and about her mission, and there's a plethora of different reactions. One of my favorite parts of was the transmissions, the faxes that Adina would send to the aliens. They were always accurate observations, and every single one of them I was like, oh. The point of the book is like to hold up a mirror to humanity, even though there's criticism on basically everything that you could criticize us for. There still was this like element of hope and inspiration. I think that it was like a really sweet interpretation of this type of story. The ending of the book, I guess I took at face value. I'm curious at other people's interpretation of the ending. I just took it literally. Those are all of my recent sci-fi reads. I know I only rated The Sea of Tranquility 2 stars, but that's because I have beef with the pandemic. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to hear about it in my books. Next up, I probably have a couple some contemporary fiction reads that I want to talk about. Thanks for watching. Bye!